The DCU is already kind of confusing me. Latest news says James Gunn is now open to bringing back several former DCEU members in their original roles, such as Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, Jason Momoa as Aquaman, and even Ezra Miller as the Flash. Honestly, at this point, I don't even care about current events. We're here to recast the DCU, and that's exactly what we're gonna do. One of those guys already got a recast, and now we're gonna do the other two as well, plus a few more. This is a fan cast, my ideal little fantasy world with a bit of realism and logic sprinkled in. And yes, sadly that means I'm unable to cast Taron Egerton in every single role. It's unfair, but frankly so is life, and this fan cast has really taught me just how rife with injustice and cruelty this world really is. Brutally so. In fact, here is my fan cast for the DCU, as requested by you guys, since my part 1 video, linked right here, received the requisite 50 likes for a follow-up part 2. Thank you so much for the love and interest. If you missed that one, either go check it out real quick and pop back, or just watch it after. The world is your oyster. You don't even have to go watch part 1, but you didn't hear that from me. But please do subscribe if you like the content. You did hear that one from me. Kicking off this list, let's go with the person I was closest to including in my part 1 casting. I had an idea way back then, and I'm sticking with it. For Wonder Woman, there's actually a lot of people I considered. Ana de Armas has proven a few times now that she can play super badass action heroes, and Elizabeth Debicki has a really cool look for the role, is an insanely good actress, and has already portrayed a Princess Diana before. Although I may have initially dismissed her because of other roles I'd seen her in, Ana de Armas is definitely my biggest honorable mention for this role. She's a wonderful actress, and generally that is one of the biggest considerations for a list like this. She's insanely popular as well, which would certainly be desirable for a franchise like this trying to get back on its feet. But there is still one person I like just a little bit more. Alexandra Daddario. Yeah, Annabeth Chase is my new Wonder Woman. I think in a different timeline where she either got cast 4 years earlier or that franchise decided to start her on the Battle of the Labyrinth or something, she would have made a perfect Annabeth Chase. Her and Logan were extremely well cast, they just made that movie far too late for them. She displays more characteristics in that movie reminiscent of Wonder Woman than you might think. Fiercely intelligent, hyper-competent, heroic, and brave. Her look is arguably as perfect for this role as it can get, and her height is either perfect or at least quite close, since Wonder Woman's height isn't something that's exactly been consistent. Which is great! No need for her to undergo that painful and inhumane height-changing surgery that some actors have had to endure. Why they'd cast Danny DeVito in the Andre the Giant biopic is beyond me, but god damn it if he didn't own that role. She's even been in a DC movie before, voicing Lois Lane in Superman Man of Tomorrow, so she's somewhat familiar with the world and interested in being a part of its universe. I think she's a classic example of a good actress who's been the best part of some pretty average movies. Not that I think this one's necessarily bad, but I quite like how funny and witty she was at times in Baywatch as well. I don't expect the DCU to turn into a straight comedy, but as I've said before, I do think it will try to have a slightly lighter tone than the DCEU for a few reasons. Mostly the James Gunn of it all, to rebrand a bit, and because I don't think the dark and brooding nature of DC past really helped it all that much. Her charming charisma in that role, and just her charming charisma in general, could really help her character when she's not being purely stoic and heroic. One other actress I couldn't help but mention is Dominique McElligott, best known these days for her role as Maeve in The Boys. There, she literally plays the parody of Wonder Woman. On paper at least. In actuality, I don't think she really parodies the character all that much. She honestly has more similar traits than spoofed ones. She just fits this role so well, and I don't know. It'd be incredibly weird, but I think she'd do a great job. Though I highly doubt it happens, and I think I'd be much happier with Daddario or De Armas or even Debicki anyways. The D's have this role locked up. Dominique. Next up is a pocket of the DC universe I particularly like, where we'll be casting our next Hal Jordan, aka Green Lantern. Our cocky and arrogant ex-fighter pilot, sound familiar, turned Green Lantern actually has a lot of similarities to our favorite Top Gun graduate. His stubbornness, his self-assuredness, his bravery, and his undeniable talent. Hal Jordan is an excellent character to follow due to the complex and interesting world he got entangled with and his own extreme personality. When he succeeds, he absolutely succeeds, but when he fails, oh boy does he ever implode. His highs are highs and his lows are low, but he usually remains pretty sure of himself and rock solid in his convictions. The right actor, for me, would have to be able to portray all of that intense confidence while retaining a high level of charm and charisma without delving too deeply into the territory of being a pure asshole. At least not too often. I actually think Nathan Fillion, who's portrayed the character a total of 10 times already, tied for the most ever with Josh Keaton, would make a lovely live-action Hal Jordan. Looks and all. 10 or 15 years ago. Yes, I do think he could still pull it off today, but he's a little old for the part, and I think the character might suffer if he were portrayed by someone who didn't have a more youthful look. Sorry, Nathan. I like Ryan Gosling. He's certainly proven time and time again that he can portray a sarcastic asshole while retaining an indelible sense of charm and likability, and he's no stranger to big sci-fi franchises. He's also one of the best actors working today, and although he's a bit older than I'd like, he really doesn't look like it, which is all that really matters. Doesn't really have the build I'm looking for though, which isn't a huge hurdle in today's day and age of actors transforming so radically, but I still think it is a consideration to take seriously. Both Chris Pine and James Marsden also briefly stuck in my mind as my official castings for a time, but sadly they're both pushing it in age, and besides, they don't quite do it for me like Gosling does. But I'm biased. Gosling is one of my absolute favorite actors, and there aren't many roles I think he'd struggle with. Pine and Marsden would both be solid for this casting, however, but sadly they're both a little too old, as is Ryan Gosling. Alden Ehrenreich is so good as a young Han Solo and portrays a lot of the same qualities as him as I'd want for my Hal Jordan, flying a ship notwithstanding. I think he'd do great. A better age as well, he could easily pull off that right style of cockiness and charisma. It didn't exactly perform that well due to some weird circumstances, but I think Solo was a really good Star Wars movie and one that people are already remembering a bit more fondly. He was a massive reason that movie worked so well for me, and his role was an extremely intimidating one. I can't believe how hard this one is. Sorry to throw out so many considerations, but I would be remiss to not include all of these phenomenal actors here. Each and every one of them would do an excellent job, and yet my official casting isn't even one of them. We mentioned it at the start, so why even bother going through this entire rigmarole? Hal Jordan was a fighter pilot, one with the self-confidence of Mike Tyson mixed with the charisma and charm of Keanu Reeves. He's naturally better than everyone, and more stubborn than a toddler who's been told the word no. Our answers have been staring us in the face all this time, and we've just been ignoring it because it felt too easy, too simple. Oftentimes the best things in life are easy, and it's no different here. My casting is Top Gun graduate, no not him, Glenn Powell. I pretty much just said all the reasons he'd be great. Maybe rein in the cockiness a bit and crank up the likability and boom, here's your Hal Jordan. Great look, great age, great everything. This was one of the more prevalent fan castings I saw online, and like I said, sometimes the simplest answer is the easiest one. I love this casting for such a great character. Since we're already here, let's cast Sinestro as well, since it'll be far quicker. Luke Evans. He just looks the absolute perfect blend of handsome and intelligent but cruel and maniacal. A mirror to Hal's self-assuredness in a more malevolent light. There are some other cool castings I've seen out there, but none seem as much of a slam dunk as this one. Make him red and put him in a yellow suit already. Well, green for a time. He needs his Christmas vibes for his introduction. Next up is one I simply can't believe we might not see a new actor for. The Flash, specifically Barry Allen. Regardless of all the Ezra Miller stuff, I never really liked him in this role to begin with, although admittedly that was mostly because of how the character was written, all quippy and almost sidekicky. Although I'm obviously super familiar with The Flash, my girlfriend is an absolute fanatic mega fan who even managed to stomach the entirety of the CW show. Even rewatching it a few times. So she helped me a lot with this particular casting, and believe me when I say I had to sleep on the couch for damn near a week when I rejected her ideal casting of Grant Gustin, who played the Flash in the CW show. She joined me on the couch, but she was still pissed. To lots of Flash fans out there, he isn't just a good element of a bad show, but rather a genuinely fantastic and picture-perfect Barry Allen. I'm extremely inclined to agree. I just think after nearly a decade of playing this character in something other than our present universe means it would be a bit odd and confusing. Kinda like casting Charlie Cox as Daredevil in the MCU, but not making that show canon and restarting his origin and everything like that. Plus, I bet this guy doesn't want to play the Flash for another goddamn decade. Just seems like a lot of guys want to move on at some point, and with Gustin announcing that he was leaving the CW show, he obviously wants to move on from the character in one way or another. But maybe it's just that CW version. Who knows? Half to save our relationship, and half because I do think he'd make a great casting, Grant Gustin will officially be listed as my ideal casting. He's proven he can work great in an ensemble already, both with non-speedsters and speedsters alike. He's got a fantastic look, not overly muscular, but built more lean and aerodynamic, like an actual runner would. And he's great as both Barry Allen and his heroic counterpart. He does love this character quite a lot, and many people love him in the role. But since I find that far less likely than any other castings I've given, I will provide an official backup. Lucas Till. Best known to comic book fans as the love interest in the Hannah Montana movie, best known to comic book fans as Havoc in the Fox X-Men movies, he's long been a fan favorite for the role since back before the DCEU rebrand with James Gunn was ever even in the works. A good look for the role, which is important, but like I've kind of said, what's just as important, if not more so, is that he's a genuinely good actor, so I'd love to see him in this role. Next up is the character who apparently only has a single prerequisite for whether or not someone can play him in live action. Is he bald? Yes, resident extreme thorn in Superman's side, Lex Luthor is our next casting, and I will be using slightly narrower parameters for casting here. Just slightly, he's still a good bald after all. Lex Luthor is a wonderful character, and like many who have graced comic book pages for as long as he has, there are many different versions of this famous character. For the most part, his personality and goals largely revolve around gaining more power and ridding the world of Superman, but his motivations for both do fluctuate a bit. In some incarnations, he grew up alongside Clark Kent, and in others they met later in life. In some, he's the President of the United States, a brilliant but mad scientist in and out of prison, or a corrupt businessman masquerading as a legit one acquiring mass amounts of fame and wealth. Through it all, however, he's ran by his own ego and desire to prove either A, he's better than Superman, or B, Superman ain't so great to begin with. Either by humiliating him or outright defeating him, Luthor wants the world to view Superman as beneath Lex Luthor, mostly because of his own jealousy and in a bid for revenge, since in most versions, Superman incidentally slighted him in one way or another early on in their relationship. Lex Luthor is an intimidating presence, though he typically lacks any form of superpowers. The right actor would need to pull off that imposing, austere form without shying away from displaying his absolute and undeniable brilliance. Conceited, entitled, and yet truly brilliant and powerful makes for a formidable and dangerous foe. Plus he's bald, we can't forget about that part. Except for the Earth 2 version, Alexi Luthor, who's technically the original Lex Luthor, he's got red hair, but I'd have to bet the DCU is going to give us the more well-known and well-established bald counterpart. John Hamm, Mark Strong, and Jason Isaacs would all be great. They've all portrayed villains before, funnily enough, with Strong as Sinestro in the now lambasted Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds, though his portrayal was one of few bright spots in the movie. Jason Isaacs has been plenty, namely Lucius Malfoy in Harry Potter, the Grand Inquisitor in Star Wars Rebels, William Tavington in The Patriot, and a fucking heap of others. And John Hamm has been sort of a prickly antagonist in things like Top Gun Maverick, Baby Driver, and Black Mirror. They all have the ability to be become powerful, imposing, well-spoken characters with a quick capacity to be cruel and calculated. Any of them would get me giddy and excited, but I think there is a better choice. And you could probably slot this guy in half of the DCU's lineup and get fans' hopes high as hell. Michael Fassbender. Much like many of the people on this list, Fassbender is simply one of the best working actors today, and despite immense range, he often finds himself in villainous and dark roles because of how goddamn good he is at it. He does imposing and menacing in his sleep, and most importantly, I think he can pull off bald. He even looks quite a lot like some Lex Luthor art as well. Michael Fassbender is my casting to play Lex Luthor in the DCU. He was great as Magneto, he'll be great as Lex Luthor, and I'm pretty sure he'll be great in whatever role is given to him for the rest of his career. To end things here, I thought it would be fun to cast a handful of people in the Batman universe. That is my favorite corner of the DC universe after all. Favorite corner of any universe really. And there are simply so many interesting and complex characters with unique and fun casting choices to choose from. How do we decide which characters to cast though? We'll let fate decide. Now let's spin that wheel. Catwoman. Ooh, that's an easy one. Rosario Dawson. She's got a super cool look for the silent and seductive cat burglar, and she's already masterfully voiced the character in the Batman Audio Ventures series already, which I highly recommend. If you're someone who commutes to work or just someone who finds himself listening to a lot of stuff like podcasts and audiobooks throughout the day, I can't recommend this enough. It has personally enhanced my commute to and from work beyond belief. It's wonderfully fun and very well written. Next is Ra's al Ghul. Now that's a cool role. A tough one. Liam Neeson did a pretty good job. This one might be a bit odd, but in my dream world, I'd go with Daniel Day-Lewis. A bit odd because of how selective with his roles he is, but mainly because he's technically retired as of 2017. Although I can't say whether or not he'll ever return to acting. If he does, I just know he'd obliterate this role. Mad Hatter. How about Martin Short? I love that casting. I think he'd pull that role off really well. This one feels like one of those weird slam dunks. Inserting Mad Hatter into this role for some villainous depth and to really show how overwhelmed Batman often gets in Gotham would be super neat. Subscribe? That's not a character. Get out of here, you. Make sure to subscribe if you're watching this, though. Bane. Tom Hardy was so good in this role. Overshadowed by literally the greatest villain of all time, his Bane remains one of my absolute favorite villainous performances. His subtleties and physical acting added so much to this role, and I personally loved the mask and his voice. It gave him a ton of personality. In terms of making him the hulking behemoth he's often depicted as, Halfthor Julius Bjornsson would be a pretty darn cool pick. I really like when they make Bane as intelligent as he is physically imposing though. In fact, in some iterations he derives a lot of his abilities through calmness and serenity rather than just animalistic brutality. He even deduces Batman's true identity by studying Bruce Wayne's body language and seeing the innate similarities. I think Dave Bautista would be great at showcasing both sides of the character, even though he has sort of publicly stated very recently that he doesn't think he'd want the role. I still think he'd do great though, and if Gunn really wanted him to, I think he could be convinced. Scarecrow. David Tennant? Get some Barty Crouch energy in there? I think that could be fun as hell. I like Cillian Murphy in the role a lot. I don't think he'd want to change too much. Could just bring a slightly more manic energy under the mask maybe. Man, this is so fun. I sure hope this DC universe pans out better than the last one did, because there are so many cool and interesting characters and actors that we didn't even get the chance to discuss. Imagine seeing Matt Smith in this world, Jake Gyllenhaal, Saoirse Ronan. I didn't even cast any of them in these roles, and yet I'd be over the moon to hear they were joining the DCU. Thank you very much for watching. Comment your castings down below for people I both have and haven't discussed. My last video helped me cast this one quite a lot. Whether I use your choice or not, it's still great to hear different takes and reasonings and analyze certain characters based on who could or might betray them. When I think of a character like Batman, it's super neat to put a certain name in my head and imagine what they'd be like versus someone else. With Henry Cavill, I think you'd see a more calculated, stoic perfection. The Dark Knight who never makes mistakes and has analyzed every situation from 1,000 different angles. With Jake Gyllenhaal, I'd imagine more angsty breakdowns and emotions hidden so slightly below the surface that he's always a half second away from erupting and imploding. This was a blast. For a potential part 3, or even a video dedicated solely to the Batman universe, I won't put a goal for likes on this one. Just comment down below if you'd be interested. I could even do just the Robert Pattinson universe as well to really reset my choices and look at things from a world that's already been established but still has a lot of room to grow. Ooh, I want to do that one. Thank you again for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more content in the future and to make me the happiest little boy in the world. Until next time. Oh, and for Plastic Man, I like Bill Hader.